Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
But we're going to do this a little bit like a Seder. Happy Passover, everybody. We're going to go around the table, and everybody's going to read a different section. So, Gary, if you could start off, I'd appreciate it. And please pass the microphone, and we're starting here.
Are you sure you want me to do this?
Yeah, I really do.
No, then we can't read the subtitles.
Oh, you're right.
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's been so...
That's powerful stuff, Amy.
Hi, everyone. It's been so frustrating for me to be surrounded by so many really neat people and not be able to talk to you all. But it's really a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank Shelley for bringing together such an amazingly cool group of folks. I want to talk to you today, I want to type to you today about what community really is.
Of course, we've all heard and read lots of people worrying about the idea of community. On the positive side, no one is more eloquent than Howard in making the point that online communities, at their best, can live up to even the most stringent definition of community.
On the other hand, it's also true that the word is sometimes used in a casual way to refer to almost any kind of group of people. In my design of online communities class with this term, one student asked, "Is a group of people in an elevator a community?" My reply was, depends on whether the elevator gets stuck and for how long.
When you look at recent essay collections about online communities, almost every chapter tries to define community. I picked the Barab and Gray book as an example because it's a great book, a really thoughtful one. But every chapter has the same sort of angsting at the start. The quote on the previous slide was from chapter 4. Here are 1, 2, and 3, and it keeps going through the whole book.
Notice also how the word community is used in a value-laden way. It's as if to say, if you are a community, then you're motherhood, apple pie, and everything wonderful. If you're not, then you're somehow debased, trying to put something over on people. Of course, that's silly, but that's how this debate seems to play out.
So what is a community anyway? This is an old question that predates the invention of the internet or computers or electricity. Sociologists have worried about this question for generations. Of course, no one can really answer the question, certainly not a computer scientist like me. But I want to suggest that we can come up with a functional definition of community, one that is useful to us in our work as social computing designers and researchers, and that a bit of cognitive science theory can help.
Specifically, I want to argue that it's useful for us to think of a community as a prototype-based category. Let me explain what that means.
Eleanor Rosch was the author of some of the earliest research on how categories work in the mind. Naively, we tend to think of categories as sets. There's some rule defining membership, and you're either a member of the category or you're not. There are two problems with this approach. First, it doesn't explain the fact that categories often have fuzzy boundaries. Is an SUV a truck or a car? My 17-month-old points out the window and says, "Truck," when he sees an SUV, and I think he's got a point. Exactly what we count as a member of the category car is fuzzy. Second, the simple notion of categories doesn't explain the fact that some things seem to be better members of a category than others.
The prototype theory of categories suggests that categories have a set of best members or prototypes. They're also called focal members. The focal member, in a sense, define the category. For example, a robin is a better exemplar of the category bird than an emu or a penguin. Other things in the category are better, worse examples, depending on how different they are from the prototype. And categories can have fuzzy boundaries.
If community is a prototype-based category, what are our prototypes? In many cases, people tend to think of idealized 1950s America that never existed. I like the quote from Wieman and Giara. I'm sorry, I can't see very well. They're basically saying, in other words, well, where's the quote? I don't know. Okay. Pundits worry that virtual community may not only be, may not truly be community. I'm sorry, I can't see very well.
Pundits worry that virtual community may not truly be community. These worriers are confusing the pastoralist myth of community for reality. Community ties are already geographically dispersed, sparsely knit, connected heavily by telecommunications, phone and fax, and specialized in content. They're basically saying, in other words, that our prototypes of the category community are idealized.
Categories don't have correct prototypes. Prototypes are social constructs. They vary for each person, though we do tend to have a degree of consensus about them for a group of people at a particular time. They vary by culture. They vary over time. They're usually implicit, but making them explicit can help us have more meaningful conversations about them. Oh, I get the long one. Perhaps most importantly, for the category community, our prototypes vary by type of community. We could call these genres of community. A church group is quite different from members of ACM Sig Chi. Similarly, a BBS like The Well is very different kind of community than Flickr, and we need to understand them differently. In the type of discourse about community that is so predominant in the literature, you could imagine someone saying, well, I buy that Well is a community, but Flickr, no way. To me, this kind of conversation has always seemed silly. I think it's more productive to say that The Well and Flickr are examples of different genres of social computing. If we think of them as communities, we need to think of them as different types of community. We understand them in relation to different prototypes.
When you think about community as a prototype-based category, your salient questions change. Instead of asking, is this a community? We can instead ask, what kind of community is this? What are the focal members for that type of community? For the group that we're focusing on, how is that group like and unlike the focal member? We can look at details and begin to ask more meaningful questions about the site design and what kind of value the site brings to its members.
As I said before, I'm not sure if sociologists will find this definition that revealing, but they're the real experts on this topic. I offer this as a potentially useful model for our purposes as social computing practitioners and researchers. I'd like to suggest that from this point of view, we can ask more nuanced questions, focus more clearly on what is important about community, which ultimately is about how we can design sites to provide more value for real people.
I want to thank Shelley for organizing such a clerical event. I'd like to thank my students and my sponsors, and thank you all for your patience with this somewhat unconventional presentation format.
towards the end when he just asks questions, formulate questions, not answers. Do you have any good sense of what the dimensions on which these prototype categories of community are likely to differ? Because to say that there are different kinds only gets you a little bit of the way. To say that essentially there's error variance in the measurement unless you have dimensions that you think are important that distinguish liquor from the well or some of those, and that those are generalizable dimensions. The way Josh talks about a cup being different than a mug, being different than a glass, on the dimension of whether it has a handle and how tall it is.
My view. Can you all hear me? Is this on? Yeah.
How can we tell it's on?
Hold it close. Yeah, if you hold it close, that'll help a lot. But my view is that those are the right questions, and that we're just at the beginning of this enterprise. And my argument here is that if we take that point of view on the subject matter, we'll make real progress in understanding this as an area of research. And the kind of map you just described is kind of exactly what we need, and that's a roadmap for what we should all, as a community, be working on in our future research. And I want to argue that that roadmap is much more productive than boasting about, is this a community or is that a community, or the kind of ways that the word and the concept are used in the literature right now.
What kind of information from existing communities would be useful to gather so that you can see different prototypes, different focal members? I guess, let me rephrase it. How can those of us out working in communities contribute to this? Because I think you're right on, and it would be immensely helpful for me in talking with people about these online interactive groups. I think it would make it easier for them to understand how they could be of value in their lives if there was an easier way of talking about it. But it seems to me that we need to bring to the researchers what we're seeing, and we need to know how that information will be useful as you start looking at this constellation.